I'm Nicole Wilbur. I'm a writer and story nerd, and welcome back to my channel. Oh my god, it's been so long, and I am so happy to be back. So, I received like 2 weeks ago, over 100 pages back from this incredible Reedsy editor who I worked with. She gave me like a 30-page editorial letter, comments on the first 50 pages of my novel, half a dozen handouts on writing technique, and comments on like a 10-page synopsis. So I have been reading and rereading and digesting and going crazy on all of these comments. There is so much. It is so amazing. It's honestly hard to know where to start, and I'm going to have a whole bunch of videos on this experience. I'm just going to talk about all of the major problems that she mentioned and she told me about. So I'm going to tell you what she said and then go back and say, this is kind of what I thought beforehand. So we can see maybe if you have similar thoughts, how you might be able to identify these problems in your own manuscripts if they are there. Before I get started, really quick, my book is a YA action-adventure heist caper story. It's a rom-com, it's emphasis on the calm, and it's super fun. Basically, Lena Ebers is a musician, and she is very into playing her violin. She goes to Europe for the summer, and she meets Maisie, and she gets pulled into Maisie and the heist crew's crazy plan in Florence. And that is the pitch, which I probably have to work on a little bit, but you know, that's like the... So, let's get into it. Problem number 1 with the book is the inciting incident comes too late, and there are too many inciting incidents. So, the inciting incident obviously is where the story starts, and it's where the premise should emerge and be made clear. Also, if you follow hero's journey or things like that, it can also be thought of as the point of no return. The point when the protagonist is like stuck on the boat and they can't leave. They're in the story. So in my book, I have a great escalating sequence where it's intriguing, there's a hook, you go, and then the sequence ends in chapter 7, and there's this weird lull that I never noticed while I was writing it, where basically the character, Lena, can just leave. It's done. It's over. She can leave. Great short story. So there's no tension there, and she's free to go back to her everyday life, and this is too late in the story for that to happen. And so then there's another series of scenes, like 5 to 6, where a bunch of things happen, and then we get into the plot again. So if you're counting, that's like 13 scenes or something before we get to the premise and we get on our straight path forward. And that's not good. You want your premise, according to the editor, to come out within the first 25 pages for a YA story. So that is something that needs to be moved earlier. So what did this feel like to me? In the beginning, I felt like the beginning was long. I knew that. I knew that the beginning was long, and it took a while to hit the gas pedal, and the middle was kind of short. So I thought I needed to beef up the middle, but what I really kind of need to do is push the gas pedal all the way down earlier. Start the story earlier and put the point of no return earlier, so she's stuck in. Problem number 2. My protagonist is a little bit reactive. At one point, I have the main character describe what brought her to Florence as a rip current. Now, I feel like it's not uncommon for protagonists to kind of be swept up in events at the beginning of the story. You know, it's an ingenue, unwary character, and they just kind of get into the novel, and it's like, phew, here you go. However, it does take a long time in my particular story for Lena to make plans of her own and to start making choices that actually matter. It's about half the book, really, before she's like, oh yeah, I'm being proactive now. And the interesting thing was the editor acknowledged that this was kind of part of her characterization, but it also makes the reader intrigue and the tension and the reader interest a lot less. And so that's something to work on. What this felt like to me was, can you hear the cock crowing? Anyways, the rooster crowing. What it felt like to me was Lena isn't the leader of the heist group, so I wasn't sure, like, how do I give her decision-making power? She doesn't know what's going on for a while, and so I found that a challenge. I was like, okay, how do I deal with the fact that she's not the leader here, the one who's having, like, the veto power? What I need to do is clarify her motivation, give her a goal in every scene, and tweak sort of the structure of the group or the structure of the plan. Number 3 is my introductory scene. My first scene is good, but it could be even better. What my editor said is it introduces the main character. It shows certain aspects of the characters which are great, sets a precedent for some illegal activities, but it could also be stronger, go deeper, and give a bigger look at the status quo. The status quo only has 2 scenes before we're off and on, which is okay, but I also agree with the fact that it is not, it could be established a little bit better. There could be one more scene in there potentially, and there could be something that is better. So what did this feel like to me? Honestly, I like the opening scene. It feels strong, which is confirmed. She said it was very strong. So I haven't touched it or considered alternative options, and I think considering some alternatives, doing some brainstorming, is a good idea. Number 4, there seem to be 2 interior goals that overcomplicate the character and the story. So yeah, my character kind of has 2 internal problems, and we'll get more to that later, but basically she said you either need to, like, choose one, or you need to kind of tie them together super firmly. And I think I'm leaning towards tying them together super firmly, because I like the payoff of the both of them, and I think they actually do pay off in a scene that I've already written. Those internal goals obviously relate a lot to the character arc, which also needs some, I would say, strengthening, but strengthening via simplifying and streamlining, so it's very clear. There is a change, absolutely, it just needs to be, you know? So what did this feel like to me? In my mind, Lena's character change was kind of around breaking expectations. I have a whole plot embryo thingy on it, but it is a bit murky, and it did feel a bit murky to me, kind of like circling the bullseye without hitting it straight on. Like, how does Lena change? I'm like, well, it's like hard for me to articulate it, and so that's a problem, and I kind of knew that, and I'm excited. We have an hour-long consultation coming up in a couple weeks, and I'm excited to work with her on streamlining that. Problem number 5 were plot holes. So she talked about a couple of different ones. Number 1 being plot conveniences. Kind of like Deus Ex Machina, like just coincidences. One being running into someone at the airport who can magically solve your problem for you. Another one that I have in my book are kind of logicality issues. So like a 12-year-old doing an autopsy, or why someone smashes their phone. So once the story is actually launched and the premise is revealed, the story has good flow, but to get there, there are a bunch of conveniences. So what did that feel like to me? I knew some were coincidental, and I accepted it, because I was like, it's the beginning of the story. It's fine. I know people will find this not as believable. It was, I think, probably a bigger issue than I thought, because I knew it was there, and I was like, Others, I wasn't aware of how it would turn out on the page. There's, like, some believability issues that I know, and then when the reader reads it, they're like, oh, I don't get it, you know, and that is why you get people to read your book for you. One of my favorite pieces of advice with plot conveniences, though, is, and it's not from this editor, it's just generally, is that if it's no longer a convenience, if a character is driving it and making it happen. So this is something that I'm toying with in those few convenience areas, as how do we turn it on its head so someone is driving that, so it's no longer a convenience. With believability, what did that feel like to me? Honestly, I didn't think about how believable it was, because those were humorous moments, so I was just thinking about making it funny. Like the character who does an autopsy, she's 12. I was like, that's funny. And maybe not. Maybe it is. I don't know. Some of those things might stay. Some of them might change. We'll see. Problem number 6 is my main character's name, and I don't know what I'm going to do about this one. So her full name is Lena Magdalena Avers. The Magdalena really came from an aspect of the story that I kind of abandoned early on, but her first name, Lena, sounds like a nickname for her middle name, which is super weird and which I did not notice. It's also the same name as the protagonist in Love and Gelato, which is a comparison title. It's not 100% because it's not exactly the same genre, but it is a comparison title for me. So that's not great. So I have to work on that. What did that feel like to me? I did not notice that at all. So, whoops. Problem number 7 is the romance is so subtle, it's confusing. There were a couple of questions around, is Lena, the main character, just awkward, or is she interested? She made some notes to add emotion around the person's thoughts, so, you know she's not just awkward, and to use the 12 physical stages of intimacy to grow the romance. What did this feel like to me? Yeah, I was tiptoeing around it. The romance doesn't really build that much, and I have to decide how far I want it to go in this book. Because number 8, the dialogue has some pacing issues, and not the issues that I thought it would have. So what the editor said was I actually interrupt the dialogue too much. She said, trim it back. Some places where it's brought out internally, like internal thoughts, they don't add anything to the dialogue. What did this feel like to me? There's this advice that was stuck in my head, and it's like you shouldn't have a lot of dialogue. You should have more description than dialogue. You should limit the dialogue. And that played in my head. Dialogue comes so natural to me. Like, that's why I like to write plays. You don't have to write any description or internal thoughts. It's just dialogue. I love that. So I often went back and added stuff in where clearly it was superfluous because I was following that writing advice. So that was actually a very affirming one for my gut instincts. Okay, problem number 9 was make the norm-breaking character more norm-breaking and more consistent. I had a couple of things where it was like, is this character consistent throughout the book? I think that's super normal in a first draft for them to, for example, Maisie, the character, she's super confident and professional. Sometimes and other times seems a bit flimsier and not as much in charge, and it's like, is she fun or is she the leader? Kind of like that. She's supposed to be norm-breaking, but she needs to be exaggerated more and brought out to make her more interesting, because norm-breaking characters can really be like a pull, but they have to be, norm-breaking enough, intriguing enough, a little bit more over the top. So what did that feel like to me? I didn't notice this as a problem at all, the inconsistency part, because it's like 70,000 words, and who can be consistent for 70,000 words? That's what editing is for. The exaggeration part, I think, is an instance where I need to make the character in my head come alive more on the page, because she's very norm-breaking in my head, so I just kind of gotta, And number 10, and this is the one that I knew about, and I knew about it, I felt it, but I didn't feel it in these terms. I couldn't articulate it properly. Is the internal plot feels bigger than the external plot. And the reason for this is probably because the primary conflict doesn't come out until much further in the book, and the internal conflict comes out at first. So it feels like the primary conflict is internal and the secondary conflict is external. I need to clarify that and fix it, because it's a heist book, so the main source of conflict really should be the external antagonists. And she pointed this out. She was like, having the internal conflict being the big thing, that doesn't fit your series as you outlined it. And I was like, no, it doesn't. So that is something I have to work on, especially on tying that external and internal conflict together. So how do I feel after all of these problems? I am very glad to have them articulated for me. I'm excited to work on them. I'm definitely nervous because there are a lot of issues to fix, and I don't know how to fix all of them, but I'm really looking forward to getting into it and also to doing my hour-long consultation with Reedsy because I think she'll really help. In that hour, I'm excited to see how many of these things we can get clarified. Especially, I mean, I'm just going to be focusing on, like, the character arc and, like, the external plot and what can we do there. In an upcoming video, I'm going to talk about all about my plans for editing, and I'm also going to do a side-by-side in a second video of my beta readers' comments versus the editor's comments, so we can kind of see what the difference was. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed, think about doing that. I am going to be posting every Tuesday from Panama, and I will see you in the next one.